parents canceled my ticket and laughed, "Guess you're stuck at home, princess." I flew myself out using my side hustle money and was already on stage when Dad whispered, "That can't be her." I, 26 female, used to be the black sheep in my family. My parents always favored my younger brothers and dismissed my dream of singing. I got into a prestigious music workshop in Nashville at 22, and my parents agreed to support me, only to cancel my flight last minute and laugh that I was stuck at home. What they didn't know was I'd been saving money from side hustles. I booked everything myself, flew to Nashville, and ended up performing live on stage. Guess who showed up to the show? My parents. My dad stared at me in disbelief and whispered, "That can't be her." Now they're furious I embarrassed them and say I lied. I don't know how to move forward from here, or if I even want to. Am I in the wrong? The last real conversation I had with my parents before it all happened was in the kitchen, a week before my flight was supposed to leave. "You're not really going to that thing anymore, right?" "What do you mean?" I asked. "We canceled the ticket." "You're not going," my mom said with a shrug. Then my dad laughed, full-on belly laughed. "Guess you're stuck at home, princess." I remember my fingers tightening around the rim of my coffee mug. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. My silence was loud enough. I'm from Laramie, Wyoming, born and raised. It's the kind of town where everyone knows everyone, and the gossip spreads faster than a wildfire in July. I grew up in a modest house with my parents, Russell and Marla, and my two younger brothers, Lyle and Curtis, the golden boys. You know the type, average grades, minor troublemakers, but doted on like they were headed to the White House. I was the only girl, and that meant one thing in our house: constant eye rolls, drama queen labels, and the implication that everything I did was for attention. I could sing, actually sing. It was the one thing I knew I was good at. Not just family good or small-town talent show good. Real good. I poured my soul into it. Spent weekends practicing in the attic, humming to the creaks in the floorboards, whisper singing at night so I wouldn't wake anyone up. When I got accepted to the Belmont University Summer Music Workshop in Nashville, it felt like something cracked open in me. Like I could finally stretch out in the sunlight. I remember reading the acceptance email on my phone while sitting in the parking lot of the grocery store after picking up milk and cereal for the family. My hands were shaking so bad, I had to read it 3 times just to be sure. It was real. I got in. The workshop cost money, of course it did, but my parents initially said they'd help. Not because they believed in me, but because it looked good. Something they could brag about to their friends. My mom even mentioned how cute it would be if I sent photos for her Facebook. So I kept preparing. I took extra babysitting gigs. Walked dogs. Cleaned houses. Sold handmade earrings on Etsy. I saved everything. I was building a quiet safety net in the background, just in case. Turns out I needed it. About a week before I was supposed to leave, I noticed the flight details in my inbox disappeared. I checked again, then again. Gone. When I asked my mom, she said, "Oh, we decided you're not ready. We're not paying for a glorified karaoke party." I asked what she meant. My dad, sitting nearby watching a rerun of Pawn Stars, just looked over and grinned. "Guess you're stuck at home, princess." That word, princess, always had venom in our house. It didn't mean pampered. It meant delusional. I went back to my room that night and didn't come out for dinner. I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning, spinning, spinning. It felt like my whole world was tilting off balance. But here's the thing about getting knocked down so many times: eventually, you start figuring out how to catch yourself. I opened my laptop, double-checked my side hustle bank account, and sat very still. I had just enough. Not a penny more. I booked a new flight, paid the program fee, reserved a bed in a small hostel 15 minutes from the university, and packed my bag in silence over the next few days. I made fake social media posts to throw off suspicion, claimed I had a bad cold, and asked my friend Raya to post a photo of us hanging out at home while I'd be gone. She was in on it. She knew what this meant to me. I didn't sleep the night before I left. I just laid there, watching the clock tick to 3:30 a.m. I carried my suitcase down the stairs like I was sneaking out of prison. Every stair creak felt like a firearm. I slid out the back door, tiptoed across the yard, and got into a rideshare 2 blocks over. The airport was quiet. My chest was not. The first time I saw Nashville, I almost cried. Not from beauty, not from nerves, but from the terrifying realization that this was really happening. I was here. Alone. But free. The workshop was magic. Not glitter and glam magic, but something deeper. Real. People who got it. Coaches who didn't sugarcoat but didn't belittle either. I'd never felt more seen. We were expected to prepare an original song for the final showcase, a live performance in front of local producers, guests, and alumni. It felt impossible at first. But each day, I chipped away at the song until it became something raw and honest. I called it Ghost Girl. It was about growing up in a house where no one saw you unless they wanted something. The day before the show, my old high school choir teacher, Mr. Halvorson, spotted my name in the alumni newsletter. He was proud of me, one of the few who ever had been. He apparently called my parents, thinking they already knew I was there. They did not. They booked a flight. And I didn't know until the night of the showcase. I was backstage, nerves electric under my skin, when one of the volunteers casually said, "Some people came from Wyoming to see you." Cute, right? I froze. I walked out onto the stage. The lights were blinding, but something in the crowd caught my eye, 2 figures in the back row, just out of the spotlight. I sang like my life depended on it. Because, in a way, it did. When I finished the final note, I looked toward the back. My dad was standing. My mom beside him. Both staring like they were looking at a ghost. My dad leaned in and whispered something. I didn't hear it, but a girl standing next to them swore she did. That can't be her. But it was. And I didn't go to them. I turned, walked off stage, and felt like I had left something heavy behind in that auditorium. I left the stage that night not with pride or some cinematic rush of vindication, more like numbness, honestly. My fingers were still shaking. My heart was somewhere near my throat. The applause faded like ocean waves behind a door, and the second I hit the wings, I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Backstage was a blur of congratulations and sweaty hugs. Someone handed me a water bottle. Someone else said something about a recording opportunity, but I couldn't process anything yet. All I could think about was that look on my dad's face. Not angry. Not even shocked. Just confused. Like I was a puzzle he'd been trying to jam the wrong pieces into for 22 years and just now realized the image never matched the box. I avoided the post-show gathering and slipped out through a side door. The Nashville air was thick and humid, and the streetlights buzzed softly above. I pulled out my phone and debated calling Raya or maybe my voice coach back in Denver. But I didn't. I just sat on the curb, staring down at my scuffed shoes, trying to come back to myself. Maybe 15 minutes later, I heard footsteps. I didn't need to turn to know it was them. My dad's voice was softer than I expected. "That really you up there?" I didn't answer right away. Just kept looking down. The sidewalk had a crack running through it, like a lightning bolt frozen in stone. "You weren't supposed to be here," Mom added. Still no response. "You lied," she said, her voice sharpening. "You made us look like fools." That got my attention. I turned to face them slowly. "I lied?" My voice came out lower than I meant, but steady. "You told me I was going. Then you canceled the ticket behind my back." Then laughed. Laughed like it was funny that I was stuck. "You didn't think I'd do anything about it." They looked at each other. My dad shifted uncomfortably. My mom crossed her arms. "You should have told us," she said. I stood up then. "You wouldn't have listened. You never do. You don't hear me unless I'm quiet, or gone, or convenient for you. Well, I wasn't quiet this time. There was a long pause. I could tell they didn't know how to respond. My dad kept glancing toward the venue like he expected someone to swoop in and save him from the awkwardness. Mom's expression flickered between frustration and something like disbelief. They weren't used to me speaking like that. Calm. Certain. I walked away before they could say anything else. Back at the hostel, I replayed the night over and over. Their faces. My song. That line, that can't be her. Was I really that unrecognizable to them? And what did that say about how they'd seen me all these years? They didn't try to contact me that night or the next day. I attended the post-workshop brunch and made small talk with a few industry people who said they wanted to stay in touch. One woman from Atlanta offered to have me down for an open mic residency she managed. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no, either. That afternoon, I finally checked my phone. A single text from my dad, "We'll talk when you're home." I didn't reply. I flew back to Laramie 2 days later, not out of obligation but logistics. I needed time to pack my things, collect the rest of my side hustle money, and figure out where to go next. Raya picked me up from the airport, and we drove in silence for a while until she finally said, "So, they saw you?" I nodded. "What did they say?" I told her the basics. She shook her head. "They're never gonna get it." That night, when I walked into the house, everything looked exactly the same, but it felt different. I felt different. My mom was in the kitchen, folding laundry with machine-like precision. My dad was outside, probably smoking by the shed. Neither of them greeted me. I went straight upstairs, closed the door, and started packing. The next morning at breakfast, my mom said, without looking up from her toast, "You should have warned us." It wasn't fair. I stared at her for a long second. "You mean it wasn't convenient for you to be surprised? You blindsided us, Brenna." And there it was, Brenna. My name. Not princess. Not girl. A small, stupid part of me latched onto that like it meant something. "You embarrassed us," my dad said, walking in. I dropped my spoon. "I embarrassed you?" He nodded slowly. "The Halvorsons were there. Your old principal. People from back home. They were all asking why we hadn't told anyone you were performing. Made us look bad. It wasn't that they were angry I went. It was that I didn't include them in the glory." "That's what you care about?" I asked, voice quieter this time. "What people thought of you?" "What did you expect, Brenna?" my mom shot back. "You shut us out. Lied about where you were. Because you made it clear I wasn't welcome to go. You wanted me stuck. We were protecting you," she said, like that made sense. My laugh came out bitter. "From what? A chance?" They didn't have an answer. Just silence, again. I packed the rest of my stuff that afternoon. I moved in with Raya for a few weeks while I sorted things out. They didn't call. I didn't either. We weren't estranged, exactly. But something fundamental had broken. And unlike before, unlike all those years I begged for their approval, I didn't feel the urge to fix it. I'd tasted something better than their validation, my own strength. And they'd seen it, too. That was the real betrayal, for them. Not that I lied. Not that I left. But that I did it without them. And succeeded. A few weeks after moving in with Raya, I started to settle into the strange comfort of the in-between, somewhere between where I'd been and where I was going. I was teaching voice lessons 3 days a week at a small performing arts co-op in Fort Collins, about an hour and a half from Laramie. The money wasn't amazing, but it paid the bills. And for the first time, I was doing something that felt mine. My old life started to feel like a past life, like a book I'd stopped reading halfway through. But every now and then, I'd get a text or voicemail from my parents. Nothing emotional, nothing vulnerable. Always transactional. Your W-2 from the dentist office came here. Want us to mail it? Cousin Braden's wedding is next month. Are you going to RSVP or should I? Not once did they bring up Nashville. Not once did they ask how I was doing. And I didn't offer. I had this fantasy, for a while, that maybe my performance had shocked something loose in them. That maybe seeing me up there, confident, composed, had flipped a switch. But people don't change just because they're confronted with truth. Not always. Sometimes they just dig their heels in deeper. That fantasy died the day I got a package from home. No note. Just a thick photo album, one of those heavy, plastic-covered ones my mom used to keep updated religiously. It was filled with old pictures. My brothers playing baseball. School award nights. Christmas mornings. And there I was, sprinkled in occasionally, blurry, cropped weird, half-smiling. Never center stage. On the last page, someone had written in all caps, "Don't forget where you came from." No signature. I closed the album and pushed it under my bed. A few days later, my dad called. I let it ring. Then he called again. And again. On the third time, I picked up. You think you're better than us now? No hello. No small talk. Just that. What are you talking about? I asked, already bracing myself. Heard you're performing in Denver next month. One of Marla's friends saw the flyer online. You didn't tell us. No, I didn't. You never think to include your family in anything. You're acting like we're strangers. Because you've treated me like a stranger for most of my life. He scoffed. You're being dramatic. There it was again. The old fallback. I'm not inviting people who don't believe in me. That's not dramatic. That's boundaries. He didn't respond for a moment. I could hear him breathing on the other end. We raised you better than this. I almost laughed. No. You raised me scared. You raised me quiet. I became better than that on my own. He hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just stood in the kitchen, phone in hand, and felt something settle inside me. Something heavy and permanent. Like concrete drying. They weren't going to change. Not because they didn't want to. But because they didn't think they needed to. And that made all the difference. Later that week, I got coffee with my old choir teacher, Mr. Halvorsen. He was in town visiting his sister and had reached out when he heard I'd moved nearby. We sat at a little cafe just off College Avenue. It was one of those rainy spring days where the sky hangs low and everything smells like wet concrete and pine. He smiled across the table at me, that same gentle smile I remembered from high school. I've been meaning to say, your performance in Nashville. I still think about it. You had that entire room in the palm of your hand. Thank you, I said softly. That means more than you know. He sipped his coffee. Your parents. I don't know what they were expecting, but they looked like someone had knocked the wind out of them. I shrugged. I wasn't expecting them to be there. They're proud. Even if they'll never say it out loud. Pride without support doesn't mean much. He nodded slowly. True. But you keep going. That's what matters. And I have. I've kept going. The Denver showcase was just a small event at a community arts space, no glitz, no labels in the audience, no real stakes. But for me, it felt like another layer peeled back. Another step further away from that dim hallway of a childhood home. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't invite them. And they didn't show up. But you know who did? My first vocal student. A shy 11-year-old named Marnie. She brought her mom and her baby sister and made a little sign that said "G.O. Miss Brenna," with glitter glue. And when I walked out on stage and saw her waving at me with both hands, something inside me healed a little more. After the show, Marnie asked if I ever got nervous singing in front of people. I smiled and told her the truth. All the time. But I remember who I am when I sing. And that's stronger than fear. She nodded seriously, like I'd just handed her a secret. Later that night, back in my little one-bedroom apartment, I thought about how quiet the phone had been. No calls from home. No texts. And for once, it didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like peace. I didn't set out to get revenge. I just wanted to live. To sing. To find a rhythm that wasn't dictated by someone else's discomfort or need for control. But sometimes, living well, honestly, unapologetically, is the sharpest kind of vengeance there is. And in the end, I didn't need to plot, or punish, or throw anyone under a bus. They did it all themselves. A year after that Denver performance, things really started shifting. I'd been performing regularly, coaching part-time, and slowly building a name in the local arts scene. One of the contacts I'd met back at the Nashville workshop, Maria Figueroa, a producer who ran a boutique label out of Austin, reached out and asked if I had any original material recorded. I sent her a few rough demos from my laptop, expecting nothing. She called me 2 days later. "Brenna, your voice tells a story. It's not just pretty. It hurts. It heals. It lives. I want to help you record a full EP." I froze in my kitchen. I was holding a spoon over a pot of ramen, and my fingers went numb. I had to sit down. The EP, which we titled Out of Frame, was released 8 months later. It wasn't mainstream. It didn't break records. But it spoke to people like me. People who grew up invisible in their own homes. People who learned how to build wings out of silence. It got local radio play in Colorado, some buzz in Texas, and eventually, one of the songs, Ghost Girl, the one I'd performed in Nashville, was featured in a regional indie film about estranged siblings. That was the first time the attention really started rolling in. And then came the email. It was from the Laramie Arts Council. They were planning their annual summer gala. The same one where my mom used to volunteer every year, where my brothers were once junior ambassadors for helping with the fireworks setup. They wanted me to headline. They wanted Brenna Mays to come home and perform a set of original songs for a gala titled Rooted and Rising, honoring local voices. I stared at the email for 10 whole minutes. Rooted and Rising. The irony. I didn't respond right away. I needed to sit with it. Talk to Raya. Talk to Maria. Talk to myself. But in the end, I said yes. Not because I needed it. But because I'd earned it. I didn't tell my parents. Not directly. I knew they'd hear about it. Marla was still active in those circles. It would spread fast. Small towns are like that. Whispers carry like wildfire. I arrived in Laramie 2 days before the gala. I stayed at a cute little boutique hotel on the edge of town. Not the old house. Not even close. I had no desire to be welcomed back. I was there on my own terms. The night of the gala, the community hall was packed. Rows of chairs, string lights overhead, delicate flower arrangements on every table. A stage that looked smaller than I remembered, yet this time, it felt like I had room to breathe. I went on second to last. People clapped as I walked out, but I didn't scan the crowd. Not yet. I picked up my guitar and began with Frame Me, a song about growing up boxed into someone else's story. The lyrics hit harder than I expected. They kept me quiet, called it grace, painted smiles on my face. Said princess, but they meant problem, told me love was earned through volume. I paused after that verse, just for a beat. And then I saw them. Back row. My dad, rigid as a post. My mom, staring with her mouth slightly open, like she'd bitten into something bitter. They hadn't clapped. But they were there. I finished the set with Ghost Girl. Slower, more raw this time. Like an echo coming home to itself. And when I strummed the final chord, the room rose to their feet. Standing ovation. I took a small bow, nodded, and left the stage. Backstage, people were shaking my hand, asking for autographs, handing me business cards, hugging me. But not them. They didn't come back. They just left. Later that night, I checked my phone. One text from Mom. "We were there. You didn't even look at us." I stared at it. And then, calmly, I replied, "You looked right through me for 22 years. I figured you were good at it." I turned off my phone and slept like a rock. The next morning, the local paper ran a feature with my photo on the cover, "Ghost Girl No More, Laramie native returns as rising star." They used the word homegrown. I almost laughed. But here's the real revenge. A month after the gala, I was asked to return again, this time, not just to perform, but to teach a summer workshop for high school singers. Paid. Sponsored. My name on the flyer. The same program I would have died to be a part of at 17, the one my parents didn't think was worth the gas money. So I went. And this time I brought Marnie with me. She sat in the front row during the workshops, proudly wearing her Miss Brenna's biggest fan shirt. On the last day, one of the students, a soft-spoken teen named Avery, asked me during the Q&A, "What do you do if your family doesn't believe in you?" I didn't hesitate. "You believe in yourself anyway. And then, one day, they'll have to buy a ticket just to sit in the back." She smiled. And so did I. That was the ending I never knew I needed. Not them clapping. Not them apologizing. Just this, me, free. Me, seen. Me, singing anyway.